Welcome to the Friday vlog.
Welcome to the Friday vlog.
And today we're going to talk about navigating scratchiness in relationships.
Scratchy. You're the scratchy one.
I'm the scratchy one. And
what am I if you're the scratchy one?
The annoying one.
Hence your scratchiness.
Yes. The interrupter.
Okay.
So, obviously when people are getting along and they're in a good mood, relationships just work fine. There's no problems in relationships. So where we get ourselves into places where it feels difficult is when we're not in the best of moods. And we really want to help couples and people in general have relationships that work well, really no matter what mood they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that can come up for me when I might not be in the best of moods is that I can become a little scratchy, or maybe a lot scratchy. And one of the instances that might come about is I might be focused on something working, and then Angus comes along and has something on his mind and just starts speaking to me. And in those situations, sometimes I can be a little scratchy, and rather than just saying I'm busy or don't talk to me, or if I were to say that, I'd say it in a scratchy way. But sometimes I'll just sort of respond, but try to get it over as quickly as possible so that I can get back to what I'm doing. And that can have some difficulty sometimes. Not recently.
Yeah. So there's tremendous opportunity for me to take that personally, and that will be all based on my programming and conditioning.
Yes.
Which I'm sure goes way, way back. And if I really wanted to delve into that, it will be something to do with, I'm sure, my father, who had a tendency to get very impatient and reactive. So my programming and conditioning around impatience is it leads to reactivity. So I developed a strong sensitivity to impatience, or my encountering impatience in another individual, because my assumption is it's going to lead to over-the-top reactivity. So I'm very sensitive to impatience. But now, with this understanding...
wait, can we play that out a little bit? So
yeah.
In your sensitivity to impatience based on your programming and conditioning, what would happen for you? Well, so I'd get scratchy.
Yeah, so I would get scratchy. I would take that.
I would get scratchy.
Oh, sorry. You would get scratchy. I would actually go to reactivity.
Okay.
Which is so ironic, because it's my trauma around reactivity is the last thing that I would anticipate myself showing up with. But that's my coping mechanism. For me to show up and treat your impatience with reactivity is me really not feeling the pain and suffering of my experience around feeling like I'm going to get shouted at. It's going to go south. So in a sense, I'm trying to beat you to the punch.
Yeah, you go on the offensive.
I go on the offensive.
So in the past, I might have been a little bit scratchy, and you would have drowned that out.
And it would have got amplified. And that was the pattern for us in our relationship when we were in a less conscious state, let's say, in terms of this understanding. That's kind of like that was the sort of relationship battlefield, was my sensitivity to your impatience because of my trauma around impatience, or my programming, conditioning, and trauma. For me, is one and the same thing.
Okay, so one way to look at that would be, well, I have to just stop being scratchy, which is certainly something that I can get better at, being more kind, being more patient, being more loving, which I think I'm pretty good at.
No, you're amazing.
No, but it's like I'm never going to be 100%.
No.
There's going to be those times, those days where I'm a little scratchy. So the solution can't be, oh, Rohini, just stop being scratchy so this never happens in the relationship. So what we're saying is, this is how it can work, where you have room for people's humanness in relationship, which for me includes a certain percentage of the time there's room in our relationship for a little bit of scratchiness.
Yeah. Yes. So really what we're saying here is it's like in an ideal scene, we would both have a little bit of understanding and both move in those directions that are going to be helpful and healthy for our future interactions when the mood goes south.
Yes.
So for my part, showing up with my reactivity or my old pattern of reactivity around impatience, now I start to take a moment and realize I'm just responding to my programming and conditioning. I'm not responding to you. Your impatience really has no bearing on my suffering. All of my suffering is a product of my own thinking. When I see that in the moment, generally, and genuinely settle in real time.
At least you're not saying enema.
Oh, no, I'm not saying enema, but I see it in the moment, and that allows me to come back into balance. And then I start remembering, yeah, you know what? I'm designed to come back into balance. This is just my old way of being, my old way of thinking, trying to get me to jump on board that train. And in the past, I would have jumped on board that train in a heartbeat.
Right.
Because I didn't have this understanding. Now it's almost like I remember what's going on.
Okay, so let's slow that down. So now, tell me more about the pause. Like, what happened where you went from me being scratchy to immediately being reactive to now being able to take that pause and not sort of jump down my throat?
Yeah, so for me now, what genuinely happens is that, am I saying genuinely or generally? I mean generally. What generally happens is that I will be surprised by, let us say, your impatience, your scratchiness. So maybe 10 minutes earlier you weren't scratchy. You're in a peaceful and settled state of mind and quite amicable. So suddenly there's a weather change. So in the past, I wouldn't know what was happening. All I would see, she's now in a shitty mood and is being mean to me, and I don't like it, and I'm not going to stand for it. Mm-hmm. Now I just see it. Oh, look, there's a change in the weather. What's all that about? I don't have to do anything with it. I think that in itself allows me to see, yeah, there's a change in the weather. I'm not going to respond to the weather. There's nothing that I have to do with it. And if I do, it's probably a lot to do with my state of mind.
Right.
And then I get on board that train of thought, and that's where I get into trouble. But now I kind of see, oh, it's just weather. I don't have to do anything with this. It will pass. And if I'm sensible, probably I won't press the point. I'll probably move out of the immediate vicinity of Rohini and wait for things to settle.
And then in the way that you're seeing it now, you're not even navigating feelings of upset within yourself. It sounds like you just see it a lot more clearly, that allows you to not be going through your own emotional turmoil.
Yeah, I don't think that now, typically I don't navigate my feelings of upset. I just realize it's just a state of mind thing. There's nothing that I really need to do here. Things will settle. I certainly have an awareness around, whatever my trauma is around that. I think that just became more self-explanatory the more I delved into this understanding. But for me to sort of navigate my feelings of upset is just going to get me more stirred up. If I can just leave it alone, my whole biology is set up to find homeostasis. It will come back to that. I don't have to do anything other than just wait.
So even if you do take it personally when I'm scratchy or impatient, you know that all you need to do in that situation is be with your own feelings and ride them out.
Yeah, I don't. It's not that there aren't moments where I do take your behaviour personally. I think for me, it's just a case of how quickly I remember. I generally remember at some point what's going on. I think I mentioned this yesterday. You were kind of appalled.
What did you say?
I said, it's almost like you wake up in a nightmare. Like there are those stories of someone waking up in a nightmare and someone is about to put a pillow on top of their partner's face.
I was appalled because you're saying that to a couple that we're working with.
It was to make a point. It's kind of like that's generally how I feel now, is I wake up. And it's almost like I wake up in my own sort of purpose-built reactivity to the situation. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? This is crazy. It's all just thought. It's all just my programming and conditioning. And I think that's kind of where I feel like I'm at now. There are moments where I get caught up, but I remember so much quicker what's going on. And everything settles so much quicker as a result of that. That's my own take on it. That's where I show up and how I show up.
I was just thinking it's so funny whenever we're doing something like this and we say something like that, often we're put to the test afterwards.
We are. Yeah, we are.
So we'll see what the rest of the week is like.
But in a sense, that being put to the test is just another opportunity to grow and learn and evolve.
Absolutely. I mean, we're always learning and growing ourselves. We certainly haven't got everything figured out, but we do have the capacity to be with each other's humanness in a lot more graceful and fun way, really. We see the humor in our humanness a lot more these days than we used to in the past. And if I'm impatient, then that means, as Angus is saying, I'm caught up in my own narrative and not really present. But I think what was really interesting when things used to get blown out of or in my opinion blown out of proportion, is that I would have a little bit of impatience, and then your response to that would be a lot bigger, and then my response would then get bigger, and that's how things would escalate.
Yeah, and as the engineers would say that I've worked with in the past, that's a positive feedback loop. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and ultimately more problematic.
Yeah.
And that's just us trying to sort of like, oh, I tried that weapon, let's use a bigger one, and a bigger one, until eventually, I don't know, it's World War III.
Yeah.
And really, the opportunity is just to sort of leave it alone, not go to the weapons closet, just wait for that weather pattern to pass through.
Yeah, so we're hoping that by exploring sort of the understanding that we've seen around this, that will help you to see how to recognize the weather patterns of your partner's emotions and moods, and know that they will pass and it isn't personal, and that with that perspective, it's so much easier to allow that to happen, whether it's within ourselves or with someone else, rather than getting caught up in that positive feedback cycle that isn't actually about positivity. It's just something amplifying. It could be something not good at getting amplified.
You should have some sort of, we should be equipped as human beings with some sort of, is it a weather vane? I seem to remember, wasn't there some sort of clock that had some sort of barometric ability, where I seem to remember there was a lady in fine clothing that would come out when it was sunny, and then a man equipped with an umbrella when it was rather inclement. It's like we should have some sort of device that allows us to see what's going on psychologically.
It could be a hat.
Could be a hat.
Was this in England?
I don't know. I have some sort of vague recollection of seeing something on that level.
I was thinking if it was in England, it was probably always the man coming out.
I think my godmother might have had one across the street growing up.
Oh.
I was always somewhat fascinated by who's going to show up today.
Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Take care.
Bye.